The massive crystal chamber sparkled with bright lights as beings from 47 different worlds gathered together for the most important meeting of their lives. The Galaxy Council had never seen such a crowd before. Every seat was filled, and many representatives stood along the walls waiting to hear what would happen next. The air buzzed with nervous energy as creatures of all shapes and sizes whispered among themselves in dozens of different languages. Ambassador Taemin stood at the center podium, his blue-scaled hands shaking slightly as he held the electronic pad that would change everything. The Valorian Empire had chosen him for this moment because he was known for his calm nature and fair judgment, but today even he felt the weight of what was about to happen. His golden eyes scanned the crowd, looking at faces he had known for years and seeing fear in most of them. The chamber itself was a marvel of engineering built from living crystal that grew naturally on the council homeworld. The walls pulsed with a soft blue light that responded to the emotions of those inside. And right now they were pulsing faster than anyone had ever seen before. The dome ceiling showed the stars beyond, reminding everyone that their decisions would affect the entire Glaxy. Taemin cleared his throat, and the universal translator carried his words to every being in the chamber. Fellow beings, he began, his voice steady. Despite his inner turmoil, we face something that has never happened before in the 3,000 years since our council was formed. A new species has asked to join us, but this is not like any species we have ever encountered before. He paused and looked around the chamber, seeing the attention of every creature focused on him. Some had multiple eyes that blinked in patterns, others had no eyes at all but sensed the world through different means, yet all of them were waiting to hear what made this new species so special and so dangerous. The species calls themselves humans, he continued, and immediately the chamber filled with the sounds of concern. Clicks, chirps, and electronic beeps echoed off the crystal walls as the translation systems worked overtime to convert the various expressions of worry into understandable sounds. They come from a small blue planet in what they call the Milky Way Galaxy, and they have submitted all the required documents for membership. Counselor Hyjin raised one of her 4 arms to signal that she wanted to speak. The ancient Zephyrian had been part of the council longer than most species had existed, and her wisdom was respected by all. Her reptilian features showed concern as her golden eyes fixed on the ambassador. What makes you so troubled by these humans? She asked, her voice carrying the weight of Centuriestamin activated the holographic display system, and suddenly the chamber was filled with images of a blue and green planet. The planet looked beautiful from space, with white clouds swirling over vast oceans and green continents, but as the images changed, the beauty gave way to something else entirely. The assembled beings saw cities covered in smoke, great wars covering entire continents, and skies filled with the trails of flying weapons. This is their home world, he said, pointing to the images. They call it Earth, and what you see here is not ancient history. This is how they lived for thousands of years. They fought wars that covered their entire planet. They built weapons that could destroy all life on their world, not once but many times over. They poisoned their air and water and cut down their forests until their planet was dying. The chamber fell silent as the images continued to play, showing scenes of destruction that would have ended any civilized species. Counselor Minho from the peaceful ethereal collective made a sound that his species used to express horror. His people had never known violence, and the idea of a species destroying its own home was beyond his understanding. But that is not the worst part, Taemin continued, and his words sent a chill through the chamber. They did not just survive this destruction, they grew stronger because of it. Every time their civilization should have ended, they found a way to rebuild it better than before. Every war taught them new technologies. Every disaster made them more determined to reach for the stars. The images changed again, showing human achievements that seemed impossible given their violent history. Great cities rising from the ashes of war, medical advances that came from treating the wounded, technologies that turned weapons into tools of exploration and discovery. The assembled beings watched in fascination and growing fear as they saw a species that should have destroyed itself, instead reaching toward the Cosmos. Young counselor, So Young, materialized her energy form at a secondary podium. Her species had evolved beyond physical bodies long ago and existed as pure consciousness. But even she seemed disturbed by what she was seeing. "I have studied their cultural transmissions," she said, her voice echoing strangely through the chamber. "What I found challenges everything we know about how civilizations developed the holographic display shifted to show human art, music, and literature from across their history. Even during their darkest times, they created beauty. They wrote poems about hope while their cities burned. They composed music about love while surrounded by war. They painted pictures of peace while living in chaos. This is not the behavior of a primitive species. This is something we have never seen before." Counselor Kyung-soo leaned forward in his seat. The representative of the Titan Confederation was known for his military mind, and his species had conquered 12 star systems through superior warfare. "Show us their weapons," he demanded. "What kind of military force do they possess?" The display changed once more, showing human military technology from primitive clubs and spears to advanced aircraft and missiles. But what made the assembled beings gasp was not the weapons themselves, but how humans used them. They saw footage of human soldiers sharing food with former enemies, of human pilots risking their lives to save people they had never met, of human commanders choosing mercy over victory when it would have been easier to destroy. They weaponize everything, Taemin explained, pointing to images of humans using farming tools as weapons and kitchen knives as survival gear, but they also turn their weapons into tools of creation. The same rockets they built to deliver bombs now carry their explorers to other worlds. The same technology they used to destroy cities now helps them build new ones among the stars. The chamber erupted in discussion as representatives tried to understand what they were seeing. Some species saw opportunity in these humans, others saw the greatest threat the galaxy had ever faced. The crystalline collective worried about contamination of their pure society. The hive minds feared that human individuality would disrupt their perfect order. The machine intelligence questioned whether biological chaos could ever be truly controlled. Elder Donghayan finally spoke, his ancient voice cutting through the noise. The oldest member of the council had seen civilizations rise and fall across the galaxy, and his words carried tremendous weight. "I have witnessed many species take their first steps into the cosmos," he said slowly. "Most are either warriors or scholars, builders or destroyers, peaceful or violent. These humans appear to be all of these things at once." The chamber fell silent again as the implications of his words sank in. The assembled beings realized they were not just debating the admission of a new species, they were confronting something that challenged their understanding of how life in the galaxy was supposed to work. Taemin looked around the chamber one final time before speaking the words that would change everything. "The question before us is simple," he said, but his tone suggested it was anything but. "Do we welcome a species that has survived everything the universe threw at them and emerged stronger, or do we fear them because they represent everything we thought was impossible?" The debate that followed would last for days, and its outcome would reshape the galaxy forever. But in that moment, as the images of Earth faded from the holographic display, every being in the chamber knew that they were witness to history in the making. The age of isolation was ending, and the age of humanity was about to begin, whether they were ready or not. The great crystal chamber had been buzzing with nervous energy for 3 hours since Ambassador Taemin finished his presentation about the humans. Every species was talking among themselves, trying to understand what they had just seen. Some were excited by the possibility of meeting such a unique species, while others were terrified by the implications of letting such dangerous beings into their peaceful galaxy. Counselor So Young stepped forward to the secondary podium, her translucent energy form shimmering with different colors as her emotions changed. Her species, the ethereal collective, had evolved beyond physical bodies millions of years ago and now existed as pure consciousness living in specially designed energy fields that allowed them to interact with the physical world. She was considered one of the greatest researchers in the galaxy, having studied over 10,000 different civilizations. Fellow council members, she began, her voice carrying a strange musical quality that made everyone listen carefully. "I have spent the last 50 cycles studying every piece of information we could gather about these humans. What I discovered goes against everything we know about how civilizations are supposed to develop and grow." The holographic display activated once again, but This time it showed detailed charts and graphs that made the assembled beings lean forward to get a better look. The data was unlike anything they had ever seen before, showing patterns that seemed impossible according to all known laws of societal development. Most species follow predictable patterns when they develop. So Young continued, her form pulsing with soft blue light as she spoke. They either become peaceful and focus on knowledge and art, or they become warlike and focus on conquest and expansion. Very rarely do we see species that can do both, and never have we seen a species that can switch between these modes as quickly as humans do. The display showed human history laid out in a complex timeline with different colors representing different aspects of their development. Red sections showed periods of war and conflict. Blue sections showed times of peace and learning. Green sections showed periods of technological advancement. But what made the assembled beings gasp was that all three colors appeared throughout human history, often overlapping in ways that should have been impossible. Look at this period they call the Renaissance, So Young said, pointing to a section of the timeline where all three colors were mixed together. During this time, they were creating some of their greatest art and making huge advances in science and learning, but at the same time, they were also fighting wars and developing new weapons. The same minds that painted beautiful pictures also designed better ways to destroy. City's Councilor Haijin raised one of her clawed hands to ask a question. How is this possible? She asked, her ancient voice filled with confusion. In our experienced species must choose between creation and destruction. They cannot do both at the same time without destroying themselves. That is exactly what makes humans so dangerous. So Young replied, her energy form flickering with what looked like excitement mixed with fear. They do not see creation and destruction as opposites. They see them as two sides of the same coin. They use the same creativity that makes beautiful art to solve problems that would stump our greatest minds. The display changed to show examples of human problem-solving that left the council members speechless. During what they called World War, two humans developed radar technology to detect enemy aircraft, but then used the same technology to study weather patterns and eventually to explore space. When they created computers to calculate missile trajectories, they then used those same computers to design better medicine and create art. But perhaps the most shocking example came next. The display showed human medical advances that came directly from treating war injuries. Techniques for surgery that were developed on battlefields became methods for saving lives in hospitals. Technologies for preserving blood and treating trauma that were created for soldiers became standard medical practice that saved millions of lives. Counselor Minho from the peaceful, ethereal collective made a sound of distress that his species used when they encountered something that challenged their understanding of the universe. His people had never known violence, and the idea that good could come from bad was beyond their comprehension. There is more. So Young continued, and her form began to pulse with brighter colors as she became more excited by her research. They have something we have never seen before in any species, the ability to learn from their mistakes and actually become better because of them. Most species either repeat their errors or become so afraid of making mistakes that they stop trying new things. Humans do neither. The display showed example after example of humans facing disasters and coming back stronger each time. Their civilization should have collapsed. They found ways to rebuild it better than before. When a plague killed 1/3 of their population, they emerged with better medicine and stronger social systems. When their cities were bombed to rubble, they rebuilt them with better design and stronger materials. They call this resilience. So Young explained, and for the first time since she had begun speaking, her voice carried a note of admiration. It is not just the ability to survive hardship. It is the ability to grow stronger because of hardship. They do not just endure suffering, they transform it into strength. Counselor Kyung-soo leaned forward in his seat, his military mind trying to understand the implications of what he was hearing. Show us their current military capabilities, he demanded. What kind of threat do they pose to us now? The display changed to show human space technology, and what the assembled beings saw made them all fall silent. The humans had weapons that could destroy planets, but they had also built ships designed purely for exploration. They had created artificial intelligence that could wage war, but they used it mainly for research and discovery. They had developed energy sources powerful enough to fuel invasion fleets, but they used them to power cities and farms. But the most disturbing thing was not what they had built, but what they were planning to build. The display showed human plans for the future. That was so ambitious, they took the breath away from species that had existed for millions of years. Plans to terraform dead planets, plans to build cities in space, plans to travel to other galaxies, plans to live forever. They dream bigger than species that have been among the stars for millennia. So Young said, her voice filled with awe and terror. They have been in space for less than a century, and already they are planning things that we have never dared to attempt. They do not accept limits. They do not believe in impossible. Chamber erupted in discussion as representatives tried to process what they had learned. Some were excited by the possibility of working with such ambitious beings. Others were terrified by the implications of what humans might do if they were given access to galactic technology. Elder Donghayan raised his hand for silence, and the chamber quickly became quiet. The ancient being had been listening carefully to everything So Young had said, and his expression showed deep concern. There is something else we must consider, he said slowly. These humans you describe sound like they would not be content to simply join our council. They would want to change it. The implications of his words sent a chill through the chamber. Every being present realized that they were not just debating whether to admit a new species to their organization. They were debating whether to invite a force of change that could transform their entire way of life. Some species had spent millions of years perfecting their societies and cultures. The idea of change was terrifying to them. Others had become comfortable with their place in the galaxy and did not want to be challenged by newcomers with bigger dreams. But as the debate continued, one thing became clear to everyone present. The humans were coming whether the council invited them or not. They had already begun their journey to the stars, and nothing in the universe seemed capable of stopping them. The only question was whether the galaxy would welcome them as friends or face them as unknowns. The evidence was overwhelming. Humans were unlike any species the galaxy had ever seen. They were dangerous and creative, peaceful and warlike, wise and foolish, all at the same time. They were a contradiction that somehow worked and that terrified the council more than any enemy they had ever faced. As the session ended for the day, the representatives filed out of the chamber, many of them wondering if they had just learned about their greatest allies or their most dangerous enemies. The debate would continue tomorrow, but already the galaxy was beginning to change. The second day of the great debate dawned with even more tension than the first. The crystal chamber was packed beyond capacity as word had spread throughout the galaxy about the mysterious human species that had never shown interest in council proceedings before had sent representatives hoping to witness this historic moment. The living crystal walls pulsed with deeper colors, reflecting the intense emotions of everyone present. Elder Donghayan activated his mobility platform and glided slowly toward the center of the chamber. His ancient form moved with the careful dignity of someone who had seen civilizations rise and fall across the galaxy. At nearly 8,000 years old, he was the oldest member of the council, and his words carried more weight than any other being present. His species, the ancients, had been exploring the galaxy when most of the other species were still learning to make fire. The chamber fell completely silent as he reached the speaking platform. Even the usual background hum of translation devices seemed to quiet as every being present focused on what he was about to say. His weathered face showed lines carved by millennia of experience, and his eyes held the deep wisdom that came from watching the universe change around him. My fellow beings, he began, his voice carrying easily through the chamber despite his great age. I have witnessed the birth of 43 different starfaring civilizations. I have seen species rise from primitive hunters to masters of space technology. I have watched empires that seemed eternal crumble to dust, and I have seen the patterns that govern how life develops across the cosmos. He paused and looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from dozens of different worlds. Each species had their own way of showing attention, but all of them were focused completely on his words, waiting to hear what wisdom he would share. In all my years of observation, he continued, I have never encountered A species that troubles me as much as these humans. Every civilization follows certain rules, certain patterns that make them predictable. Most species develop either great military power or great wisdom, but rarely both. Most become either peaceful explorers or aggressive conquerors, but never truly both at the same time. The holographic display activated, showing images from Elder Donghayan's personal archives, thousands of years of observations and data collected from across the galaxy. They assembled beings saw the rise and fall of empires, the development of countless technologies, and the patterns that governed how species evolved and grew. Humans break all these rules, he said, pointing to the display. They have developed both military might and technological wisdom. They are both peaceful explorers and fierce warriors. They unite their enemies and turn them into allies. They take their greatest failures and transform them into their greatest successes. Counselor Ji Wu from the scholarly dominion raised several of her tentacles to signal that she wanted to speak. Her species was known throughout the galaxy for their incredible intelligence and their vast libraries of knowledge. But surely their primitive technology makes them harmless, she said, her voice carrying the confident tone of someone who had studied the problem carefully. Their fastest ships would take decades to reach our nearest systems. Elder Donghayan turned to face her, his ancient eyes gleaming with something that might have been amusement. That is exactly what makes them so dangerous, he replied. They do not see their limitations as permanent barriers. They see them as temporary problems to be solved. I have studied their rate of technological development, and it defies all known patterns. The display changed to show human technological progress over the last few centuries, and what the assembled beings saw made them shift nervously in their seats. In less than 200 years, humans had gone from traveling by horse to reaching their moon. In less than another century, they had built space stations and were planning missions to other planets. Most species take thousands of years to develop space technology, Elder Donghayan continued. Humans did it in less than 3 centuries. Most species need millions of years to develop advanced propulsion systems. Humans are already working on faster than light travel, and they have only been in space for a few decades. The implications of his words sent ripples of concern through the chamber. If humans could advance so quickly while isolated on their own planet, what might they accomplish if they gained access to galactic technology and knowledge? But technology is not what makes them truly dangerous, Elder Donghayan said, his voice growing more serious. There is something else they possess that we have never encountered before in any species. They have the ability to inspire others to achieve more than they ever thought possible. The display showed examples of human leadership throughout their history. Leaders who convince their people to attempt impossible tasks and somehow succeed. People who refuse to accept defeat even when facing overwhelming odds. Individuals who inspired entire civilizations to reach for dreams that seemed beyond their grasp. They call it hope, he explained, and for the first time since he had begun speaking, his voice carried a note of wonder. It is not just optimism or positive thinking. It is the absolute refusal to accept that anything is truly impossible. They believe that any problem can be solved, any challenge can be overcome. Any dream can be achieved if they just try hard enough. Counselor Wu Jin from the Defensive Alliance stood abruptly, his multiple arms gesturing in agitation. But this makes them extremely dangerous, he protested. A species that refuses to accept limits is a species that cannot be controlled. What happens when they decide our territory belongs to them? What happens when they want our resources or our technology? Elder Donghayan nodded, slowly acknowledging the validity of the concern. You raise an important point, he said, but consider this: humans have had the ability to destroy their own planet for decades, yet they have chosen not to use it. They have weapons that could kill millions, yet they spend more resources on saving lives than taking them. They have the power to conquer weaker nations, yet they often choose to help them instead. The display showed examples of human cooperation and assistance programs that had helped lift entire regions out of poverty and disease. Species that had devoted their entire existence to conquest found it difficult to understand why humans would choose to help others when they could dominate them instead. There is something else about humans that sets them apart from every other species. I have studied, Elder Donghayan continued. They have the ability to change their fundamental nature when circumstances require it, they can be gentle healers or fierce warriors depending on what the situation demands. They can be practical engineers or visionary artists depending on what is needed. Chamber began to buzz with conversation as representatives discussed the implications of what they were hearing. Some species were rigid in their nature, unable to change even when change was necessary. Others were so flexible they had no consistent identity at all, but humans seemed to have found a balance between stability and adaptability that gave them incredible advantages. Most importantly, Elder Donghyun said, raising his voice to quiet the discussion, humans possess something that could revolutionize our entire galaxy. They have learned to work together despite their differences. They have dozens of different cultures, languages, and belief systems on their single planet, yet they have found ways to cooperate on projects that benefit everyone. The display showed human international cooperation, projects that had achieved remarkable results. Despite their history of conflict, humans had learned to work together on space exploration, disease prevention, environmental protection, and scientific research. Their ability to unite former enemies in common cause was unprecedented in galactic history. This ability to create unity from diversity could be exactly what our galaxy needs. Elder Donghyun concluded, the Council has struggled for millennia to get different species to work together effectively. We have achieved peace, but we have not achieved true cooperation. Perhaps humans could teach us how to accomplish what we have never been able to do alone. The chamber fell silent as the assembled beings contemplated his words. The idea that a primitive species could teach advanced civilizations was both humbling and terrifying, but the evidence was clear. Humans had somehow mastered the art of cooperation despite their differences. As Elder Donghyun returned to his seat, the debate that followed was unlike anything the Council had ever experienced. Some representatives argued that humans represented the greatest opportunity the galaxy had ever seen. Others insisted they were the greatest threat. Either way, it was becoming clear that the decision about human membership would change everything. The testimony of the eldest and wisest member of the Council had shifted the debate from whether humans were dangerous to whether the galaxy could afford to face the future without them. The question was no longer about the risk of accepting humans, but about the risk of rejecting them. Night fell over the Council world, but the debate continued as representatives struggled to understand what the arrival of humanity would mean for the galaxy. The universe was about to change, and everyone knew it, but none of them could predict exactly how. The third day of the great debate began with an atmosphere of electric tension that seemed to charge the very air of the crystal chamber. Representatives from across the galaxy had been arriving throughout the night as news of the human question spread to even the most remote systems. The chamber was now so crowded that many beings had to stand along the walls, and some were even floating in the air using various forms of anti-gravity technology. Counselor Yunji stepped forward to the main podium, her cybernetic enhancements gleaming under the chamber lights. Her species, the Techno Collective, had long ago chosen to merge organic life with artificial intelligence, creating beings that were part biological and part machine. She served as the head of galactic intelligence and had access to information that most Council members could only dream of. The chamber fell silent as she activated her neural interface and connected directly to the Council most secure databases. Her artificial eyes glowed with data streams as she processed information at speeds that would have been impossible for purely organic beings. The display screens around the chamber flickered to life, showing classified symbols and warning messages. Fellow Council members, she began, her voice carrying the strange, harmonic quality that came from her mechanical vocal cords. I must share intelligence that changes everything we thought we knew about the human situation. What I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest levels, and some of you may find it disturbing. The chamber held its breath as she paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. Representatives who had been debating theoretical questions about human nature suddenly realized they were about to hear something that would make the debate very real. We have been monitoring human communications for the past 50 of their years, she continued. Her cybernetic enhancements allowed her to access vast amounts of data simultaneously, and she began displaying intercepts of human radio and television broadcasts. Our deep space listening posts have been collecting their transmissions, and our analysis teams have been studying their culture and technology. The displays showed examples of human entertainment, music, art, and news broadcasts that have been traveling through space for decades. The assembled beings watched fascinated as they saw glimpses of human daily life, their hopes and dreams, their fears and ambitions. It was like looking through a window into an alien world. But 3 months ago, something changed, Yunji said, and her tone became more serious. Our monitoring stations detected unusual patterns in human communications. They began using encryption methods that were far more advanced than anything we had seen from them before. At first, we thought it was a natural development in their technology, but then we discovered the truth. The display changed to show technical readouts and signal analyses that made several council members gasp in recognition. The patterns were unmistakable to anyone who understood galactic communication protocols. They know we exist, she announced, and the chamber erupted in shocked sounds from dozens of different species. They have detected our observation probes, intercepted fragments of our communications, and they have been actively trying to decode our language for the past 2 years. Panic rippled through the chamber as representatives realized the implications of what they were hearing. If humans knew about the galactic community, then everything changed. The debate was no longer about whether to invite them to join. It was about what to do now that they were already trying to make contact, but that is not the most shocking part. Yuanji continued, raising her voice to be heard over the commotion. Most species react to the discovery of galactic civilization with fear or worship. They either hide from us or try to surrender to us immediately. The humans have done neither. The chamber fell silent again as beings waited to hear what the humans had actually done. They are excited, she said, and for the first time since she had begun speaking, her mechanical voice carried a note of what might have been amazement. They have created what they call first contact protocols. They have been preparing for this moment for decades. They have committees studying how to communicate with alien species. They have written books about what contact with galactic civilization might mean. They have even created fictional stories about joining galactic communities. The display showed examples of human science fiction literature and movies that dealt with contact with alien civilizations. The assembled beings watched in fascination as they saw humans imagining scenarios very similar to what was actually happening. Stories of humans joining galactic federations, of learning from advanced alien species, of contributing to interstellar civilization. They want to meet us. Unji continued, her voice growing stronger. They want to learn from us. They want to share their knowledge with us, and most remarkably, they want to help us. Counselor Wu Jin from the Defensive Alliance stood up, his multiple arms waving in agitation. Help us, he demanded. What could such a primitive species possibly offer to civilizations that have mastered space travel for millennia? Ji turned to face him, her cybernetic eyes focusing on his with mechanical precision. Everything, she replied simply. They have already solved problems that have puzzled our greatest minds for centuries. The display changed to show examples of human innovations that had applications far beyond their primitive level of technology. Medical techniques that could extend life for dozens of species, mathematical formulas that could revolutionize faster than light travel, engineering solutions that could improve the efficiency of galactic infrastructure. But most importantly, she continued, they have mastered something that we have struggled with since the Council was founded. They have learned to make enemies into allies, to turn competition into cooperation, to create unity while maintaining diversity. The chamber began to buzz with excited conversation as representatives realized what this could mean for the galaxy. The Council had always struggled with conflicts between member species, with trade disputes and territorial disagreements, with the challenge of getting different cultures to work together effectively. Our analysts have studied their international cooperation projects, Yunji continued, and what they have accomplished is remarkable. They have species-wide programs for disease prevention, environmental protection, space exploration, and scientific research. They have learned to share resources and knowledge across cultural and political boundaries. The display showed human organizations like the World Health Organization, the International Space Station, and various Scientific research collaborations, the assembled beings watched in amazement as they saw humans working together on projects that benefited their entire species. There is more, she continued. Our intelligence suggests that humans have been preparing, not just for contact but for membership in a galactic community. They have been studying our observation patterns, trying to determine what we might be looking for in potential members. They have been working to improve their environmental record, to reduce their conflicts, to advance their technology. The implications sent shockwaves through the chamber. If humans had been preparing for galactic membership, then they were far more advanced politically and socially than anyone had realized. They were not just a primitive species stumbling into space, they were a civilization actively working to become worthy of joining advanced galactic society. But perhaps the most disturbing revelation came next, Yunji said, and her voice carried a note of something that might have been respect or fear. Our analysis indicates that humans have been observing us as much as we have been observing them. They have been studying our technology, trying to understand our society, attempting to learn our languages. The chamber fell completely silent as the full implications of this statement sank in. The relationship between humans and the galactic community was not what anyone had thought. It was not advanced beings studying primitive ones. It was two civilizations studying each other, preparing for an encounter that both sides knew was inevitable. They are not waiting for us to contact them, Yunji concluded. They are preparing to contact us. They have been building the technology and developing the knowledge they need to reach our space, and based on our projections, they will succeed within the next 10 of their years. The debate that followed was unlike anything in council history. Representatives who had been discussing theoretical questions about human nature suddenly found themselves facing the reality that first contact was not a distant possibility but an approaching certainty. Some species were terrified by the idea of humans actively seeking contact. Others were excited by the prospect of meeting beings who had prepared so thoroughly for the encounter. But everyone realized that the galaxy was about to change in ways they had never imagined. As the session ended, representatives filed out of the chamber, knowing that they had just learned something that would reshape their understanding of the universe. The humans were coming, and they were coming as equals, not as supplicants seeking admission to an advanced civilization. Revelation had changed everything. The question was no longer whether humans deserved to join the galactic community, but whether the galactic community was prepared to welcome beings who had been preparing to join them all along. Night fell over the council world, but few beings slept. As they contemplated what the morning would bring, the age of humanity was beginning, whether the galaxy was ready or not. The fourth day of the great debate was scheduled to be the final day of discussion before the council would vote on human membership. The crystal chamber was packed with representatives from every corner of the galaxy as beings waited to hear the closing arguments that would determine the fate of humanity relationship with galactic civilization. The living crystal walls pulsed with deep purple light, reflecting the intense emotions of everyone present. Elder Donghain had just begun his closing remarks when the chamber emergency alert system activated with a sound that none of the assembled beings had ever heard during a council session. Red lights began flashing around the chamber, and the universal translator carried an urgent message that made everyone freeze in their seats. Emergency communication from Defense Fleet Command came the announcement. Priority Alpha message from Captain Jae-hyuk requesting immediate council attention. The chamber fell completely silent as the implications of an emergency communication during the human debate became clear. Captain Jae-hyuk was the commander of the Outer System Defense Fleet, responsible for monitoring the approaches to the council homeworld. For him to interrupt a formal council session meant something unprecedented was happening. Ambassador Taemin activated the communication system, and Captain Jae-hyuk appeared as a hologram in the center of the chamber. His blue-scaled face was tense with concern, and his usually calm demeanor showed signs of stress that made the assembled representatives lean forward in their seats. Counselors, he began, his voice carrying the crisp authority of a military officer. We have a situation that requires immediate attention. Our long-range sensors have detected an unidentified vessel approaching the outer edge of our star system. The vessel appears to be of unknown origin and is using a propulsion system that does not match any known galactic technology. The chamber began to buzz with nervous energy as representatives realized that an unknown ship approaching during the human debate could not be a coincidence. Several beings expressed concern in their various languages, creating a cacophony of worried sounds. That the translation system struggled to handle Counselor. Bilram from the Navigation Guild stood up, her tentacles writhing with agitation. "That is impossible," she protested. "Our charts show no species in that region of space capable of interstellar travel. The nearest civilization is over 50 light-years away and lacks the technology to reach." Bus Captain Jae-hyuk nodded grimly, acknowledging her concern. "That is what makes this situation so unusual," he replied. "The vessel trajectory suggests it originated from the direction of the Sol system, the home of the humans we have been discussing. But our calculations showed that humans would not achieve interstellar travel for another century at minimum." The implications of his words sent shockwaves through the chamber. If a human vessel was approaching their council homeworld, then everything they thought they knew about human technology was wrong. The debate about human membership had suddenly become very real and very immediate. "How is this possible?" demanded Counselor Hyjin, her ancient voice carrying the authority of someone who had seen the rise and fall of countless civilizations. "Our observations showed that humans had not yet mastered faster than light travel. They have not mastered it," Captain Jae-hyuk replied, and his tone carried a mixture of admiration and concern. "They have improvised it. Our analysis of their engine signatures suggests they have created some kind of hybrid propulsion system using principles we do not fully understand. The vessel appears to be held together with what our translators describe as determination and recycled materials." The main holographic display activated, showing the approaching vessel in detail. What the assembled beings saw defied all their expectations of what a starship should look like. The human vessel was clearly not built in any advanced shipyard. It looked like it had been assembled from spare parts with mismatched hull sections, jury-rigged systems, and improvised components visible across its entire surface. It resembles nothing so much as a flying junkyard, one of the technical analysts reported, but somehow it is maintaining faster than light velocity and appears to be fully functional. The chamber erupted in discussion. As representatives tried to understand what they were seeing, some were impressed by human ingenuity in creating interstellar travel from primitive materials. Others were horrified by the implications of what humans might accomplish if they gained access to proper galactic technology. "The vessel is transmitting a message," Captain Jae-hyuk announced, and the chamber immediately fell silent. "Would the council like to hear it?" Ambassador Taemin looked around the chamber, seeing anticipation and fear in equal measure on the faces of the assembled beings. After a moment of consideration, he nodded. "Send us the transmission." The communication system activated, and suddenly the chamber was filled with a human voice speaking in heavily accented but understandable galactic standard. The translator identified the speaker as someone named Chan Wo, who appeared to be the mission commander. "Greetings, friends of the galaxy," the voice said, and the casual tone made several council members shift uncomfortably in their seats. "We are the crew of the Earth vessel Determination, and we come in peace. We know you've been watching us for some time, and we thought it was about time we introduced ourselves properly." The chamber held its breath as the human continued speaking, his words carrying across the vast space with surprising clarity despite the obvious technical limitations of his equipment. "We bring gifts of knowledge, art, and something we call pizza," the human said, and several beings made sounds of confusion as their translators struggled with the unfamiliar word. "We know we are not the most advanced species you have encountered, but we promise we are among the most stubborn. We have survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, and something called reality television, so we figure we are ready for whatever the universe has to offer." The casual humor in the transmission created a strange atmosphere in the chamber. Some beings were amused by the human approach to first contact, while others were concerned by the lack of proper diplomatic protocol. Most were simply amazed that humans were actually here engaging in real-time communication with the galactic community. "We have come to formally request membership in your galactic community," the human continued. "We understand this is unusual, since most species wait to be invited, but we have never been very good at waiting. We prefer to take action and see what happens. We hope you will forgive our direct approach," the transmission continued. with the human explaining their journey and their hopes for the future. They spoke of their dreams of exploring the galaxy, of learning from advanced civilizations, of contributing to the greater good of all species. They also mentioned their willingness to share their knowledge and resources with anyone who needed help. As the transmission ended, the chamber remained in stunned silence. The theoretical debate about human membership had suddenly become a practical question of how to respond to beings who were already here. Asking to join the humans had not waited for permission or invitation. They had simply decided to take the initiative. Captain J. Yuck reappeared on the holographic display. "The vessel is requesting permission to dock at our outer station," he reported. "The crew appears to consist of 5 humans who are eager to meet with council representatives. They have indicated they are prepared to wait as long as necessary for a response." The chamber erupted in urgent discussion. As representatives realized they were facing an unprecedented situation, never before had a species approached the council directly and asked for membership. Most civilizations were contacted by council exploration teams and guided through a careful process of evaluation and preparation, but humans had bypassed the entire system and presented themselves as candidates for membership, ready to begin negotiations immediately. It was bold, presumptuous, and completely contrary to established protocol. It was also exactly what Elder Donghayan had predicted humans would do. Some council members were outraged by the breach of protocol. Others were impressed by human initiative and courage. Still others were simply amazed that beings from such a primitive world had managed to cross interstellar space in a vessel that looked like it was built in someone's backyard. As the debate continued, one thing became clear to everyone present. The age of theoretical discussion about humans was over. The age of practical cooperation or conflict with humanity had begun. The humans were here and they were not going away. The question was no longer whether to admit humans to the galactic community, but how to respond to beings who had already announced their intention to join. Whether they were officially invited or not, the demonstration of human determination and ingenuity had changed everything. The galaxy would never be the same again, and everyone in the chamber knew it. The future was approaching faster than anyone had expected, and it was carrying a crew of humans who were eager to get started. The crystal chamber had never seen such chaos in its 3,000-year history. Representatives from 47 different species were engaged in heated discussions that ranged from excited whispers to loud arguments that required the translation systems to work overtime. The arrival of the human vessel had transformed the theoretical debate into an immediate crisis that demanded action. Elder Donghayan sat quietly in his designated area, watching the confusion with the calm expression of someone who had seen many such moments throughout his long life. His ancient eyes followed the various groups of representatives as they tried to decide how to respond to the unprecedented situation of humans arriving uninvited at their doorsteps. Some species were calling for immediate acceptance, arguing that human initiative and courage proved they were ready for galactic membership. Others demanded that the humans be turned away for violating established protocols and procedures. Still others wanted to delay the decision until they could study the human vessel and its crew more carefully. Ambassador Taemin stood at the center podium trying to restore order to the chamber, but the excitement and fear generated by the human arrival made it nearly impossible to maintain normal debate procedures. The living crystal walls pulsed with rapidly changing colors, reflecting the intense emotions of everyone present. Finally, Elder Donghayan activated his mobility platform and slowly made his way to the main speaking position. The chamber gradually fell silent as beings noticed the movement of their most respected member. His presence commanded attention without the need for words, and soon every eye in the chamber was focused on him. "My fellow beings," he began, his ancient voice carrying easily through the vast space, "we find ourselves facing a moment that will define the future of our galaxy. The humans have not simply requested membership, they have demonstrated their readiness for it by crossing interstellar space to meet us as equals." He paused and looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from species he had known for centuries. Some showed fear, others showed excitement, but all showed respect for his wisdom and experience. "The question before us is not whether humans are dangerous," he continued. "We have established beyond doubt that they are. The question is not whether they are capable of great achievements. We have seen evidence of their remarkable abilities. The question is whether we are brave enough to welcome them into our community. Despite our fears, Counselor Hyjin raised one of her clawed hands to speak. The golden scales on her reptilian face glinted in the chamber lights. As she addressed the elder, "But surely we must consider the risks," she said, her voice carrying the concern of someone who had seen the rise and fall of many civilizations. What if they prove to be too disruptive to our peaceful society? Elder Donghyun nodded, acknowledging her concern. "You raise a valid point," he replied, "but consider this alternative. What if we reject them, and they decide to build their own galactic civilization? What if we force them to see us as obstacles rather than allies? What if we turn potential partners into enemies by our own fear?" The implications of his words sent ripples of concern through the chamber. Many beings realized that rejecting humans might be even more dangerous than accepting them. A species with human determination and ingenuity could become a serious threat if they felt they had been unfairly treated. Counselor So Young materialized her energy form near the main podium, her translucent body pulsing with different colors as she spoke. "In all my research," she said, "I found one human saying that captures their entire approach to life. They believe that fortune favors the bold. Perhaps it is time we learn from their example." The chamber fell silent as beings contemplated her words. The idea that advanced galactic civilizations could learn from primitive humans was both humbling and exciting. Many species had become comfortable with their established ways of doing things, and the prospect of change was both thrilling and terrifying. Captain Yuk appeared again on the holographic display system, his image flickering slightly due to the emergency communication protocols. "The human vessel commander is